We want to welcome everybody to our first IEF Conservation Chat for 2025. And it looks like we have quite a great group out here today. I see a lot of really familiar names. And so it's good to see everybody out here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Julie Bates, and I'm the Donor Relations Manager for IEF. And I know that I've probably talked to a lot of you via email, and you probably get the reminders from me. So we're going to have a great chat for you today. And before we get started, I have a couple housekeeping items to go through as our presenter goes through. If you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat, and then we will kind of go through the questions one by one. Also, while the presentation is going on, if you could have your cameras off and your volume muted, that would be great, because we have a lot of people that are joining in from different parts of the world, and it helps save bandwidth for us. So those are kind of that's the rundown on that. And so now I think I will just introduce our staff that we have here from IEF. I know we have our executive director on the line, Deborah Olson. So she might want to wave and say hello.
Hello.
And then I'll turn it over to Sarah Conley, our conservation coordinator, and she's going to be our moderator today, and she will introduce our presenter. So take it away, Sarah.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, all. Happy New Year. Welcome to our first conservation chat of the new year, and we are very happy to welcome a conservation scientist based in South Africa, Dr. Michele Miller. Dr. Miller has a PhD in immunology and a master's in public health, which led her to postdoc work at the San Diego Zoo, as well as working in extensive history with many zoos, including Disney's Animal Kingdom and the LA Zoo. She moved to South Africa in 2013 and is currently based full-time in the iconic Kruger National Park, working on immunology, tuberculosis, among other things, with elephants and rhinos, with Stellenbosch University. So we are super excited to have her here today and tell us all kinds of amazing things that I'm sure none of us know or we can all learn more about. So welcome, Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm just going to share my screen. And are you able to see the presentation and hear me?
Yes, we are. I'm looking at presenter notes right now, though.
Okay, let me see if I can switch this around. Sorry.
No worries.
I thought I had it solved.
It's fine. It's always there's always some friction, but
okay. Let me stop sharing and turn this around. Very sorry for the technical glitch here. Let me try this again.
No worries. We are, just so everyone on the line knows, we're recording this, so you'll be able to replay it after we send out the replay link. So share it with your friends if you want, because we all know a lot of elephant people who work during the day and can't necessarily come to these things, so.
Okay, do you see my screen now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Sorry for that. I want to thank the International Elephant Foundation and Deborah, Sarah, and Julie for this opportunity to speak with you today. I'm really pleased to be able to share a little bit of kind of my experiences working with elephants. So, okay, is this moving forward? There we go. Okay, just to give you a little bit of background where I'm coming from. As you heard from Sarah's introduction, I've spent over 25 years as a zoo veterinarian in the United States at various facilities. And this really gave me the opportunity to learn about all the different species, some of the health challenges that they have, and also to really create an interest in doing some research on some of these particular challenges. So in 2013, as you heard, I moved to South Africa. And I had been coming to South Africa for about 10 years, doing research projects while I was still working as a zoo veterinarian. And I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to be invited to join the Stellenbosch University medical faculty, which is based in Cape Town. And we have a beautiful state-of-the-art biomedical research institute with a lot of specialty research that goes on in human tuberculosis and other health challenges. So I was the first research veterinarian to join the faculty. And because of that, we've been able to open up ideas and share between human scientists and health experts, as well as in the veterinary world. So, of course, my interest being in large mammals, African mammals, especially elephants and rhinos, I was able to become based in the Kruger National Park with their veterinary wildlife services. And of course, our university is at the far end of the country in Cape Town, where you see the little blue star. And Kruger National Park is that green area on the map in South Africa. So we border Zimbabwe and Mozambique and share borders with the conservation areas in both of those countries. And you can see on the right side of the picture that this is some of my research team that regularly come up to visit Kruger to perform different projects, along with the veterinary wildlife services team, which is really important in having those collaborations for our research and conservation work. So a lot of our work with elephants is focused on some of the health challenges. So one thing in particular that we worry about is tuberculosis, which is found in wild elephants, as well as being a health concern for zoo managed animals. And in this picture, you can see that it takes a large team to do this kind of work. In the left-hand corner, this is just an example of some of the work that we've done to develop new field-friendly techniques for doing procedures that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do with wild animals. So you can see we've got a custom-built 3-meter flexible endoscope that we're putting into the airways of our immobilized elephant and being able to check them for any type of presence of disease, and also to get samples for developing research, new research ideas, and also helping us learn how to make better diagnostic tests, and just basically more of the biology of elephants in the wild, particularly African elephants. So I thought today what might be interesting is that oftentimes researchers and scientists tell you all about their research and those type of things, but then the question is, how did they actually even get that sample in the first place? So I wanted to take just a few minutes today to share with you something fun, which I thought you'd enjoy. And then that is the answer to the question, how do you handle a wild elephant? And I will give you a little caveat here. You can see we're handling this wild elephant, but in fact, he has been heavily sedated. You can see a dart that gave him these potent drugs for us to work on him. We wouldn't normally do that with a wild animal, but sometimes they do just stand instead of lay down. So when we think about immobilizing an elephant, it takes a lot of planning, equipment, and resources. So in our particular situation, even to locate an elephant, there are vast areas of Kruger National Park that don't have roads or or access. So they rely very heavily on using helicopters to locate animals and to carry out the conservation work. So you need skilled bush pilots. You also need an experienced ground team with specialized equipment, which you can see in the right-hand corner. And of course, you need a specialist wildlife veterinarian with dart guns and the appropriate drugs for the species that you're working with. So when we get that all together, then we can make our plans to go out and locate an elephant. So in this short video, I'm going to show you how after an elephant is darted from the helicopter, it can take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes for the drugs to have effect and therefore be able to move in to handle the animal for whatever procedure we're doing that day. So in this video, you'll see that the very skilled helicopter pilots are trying to keep the elephant from going into other hazards, whether that's bushes, water holes, and they use the helicopter like almost like a rodeo horse to keep the elephant in an open area. So there isn't any sound, but you can see our elephant has just been darted, so he's still very awake. And he wants to go away from the open area and where he got his dart. So then the helicopter pilot will use the helicopter to gently move him or redirect him into the open areas for our procedures. Oops, sorry. So once the elephant becomes affected, oftentimes they will actually just lay down. Unfortunately, sometimes they do either stay standing or they might lay down on their chest. And that is a concern because of the unique anatomy of the lungs in elephants. In order for them to breathe effectively, they actually need to be on their side and not on their chest. So in some cases, we use people power to push them over, or we can use ropes with vehicles to position them. And the most important thing is, of course, getting them into a safe position, straightening out their trunk so they can breathe. And as you can see, we use some high-tech equipment here, which is a small stick that keeps their airways open and allows us to then work on the animal safely. In this picture, you can see a number of different procedures going on. We are again doing some sampling of respiratory material to look for things like EEHV and also tuberculosis. We are doing a trunk wash up in the right-hand corner, which is a little bit different than what the procedure we do in our zoo animals. And then we also take blood samples just to monitor their health and also for comparison to domestic, or I should say, human managed elephants. So we can get a lot of information from an immobilized elephant by collecting various samples. When we have the animal immobilized, we always collect a set of blood samples, tissue biopsy, feces, ticks, and other material that can be used to put into a biobank for future research, which is really important because, as you can see, it can be quite costly and involved to even get a single sample from an elephant. And I just want to introduce our PhD student, Stacy Engel, who is working on a project to understand immune responses in African elephants and help us to really be able to diagnose and hopefully have good interventions for disease in the future for our animals. And she is being supported by a grant from the International Elephant Foundation. So once we get our procedures done, and again, with a big team, that can be done quite quickly. If we aren't going to be moving the animal to another location for a translocation project, oftentimes what we'll do is just wake the animal up and they will will go on their way. However, oftentimes the reason that we're immobilizing the animals are to examine them and perform tests, which will then allow us to translocate them. So as you can imagine, these animals are not trained. So we need to be able to move them safely from the field into their transport crates into their new homes. So I'm just going to go through a few of those steps. Once we finish, again, sampling, what we do is we can use a crane truck and some very strong straps that are placed around the leg of the elephant. We just lift him a little bit off the ground and then gently lower him down onto a conveyor belt. And this is used then to be able to transport him to a road into a truck crate for further journeys down the road. So after we lower him down, they will put this chain across him, and the chain will then be hooked up to a tractor, and he'll be pulled onto this specialized roller trailer that as he gets moved up onto that, then it will go into a horizontal position, and then the tractor can take the elephant to a road with where the trucks are located. As you can imagine, you need some very specialized crates for elephants. The crate on the left is a recovery crate, and this is a wider crate that is used to put the animal in while he's still laying on his side and gives him enough room to be able to stand up once we give him the antidote for the immobilizing drugs. We do need also specialized trucks with flatbeds that are lowered, because obviously the transport crates have to fit under bridges and meet all the road regulations for transporting the animals. So we have two different types of crates that we use. The recovery crate, which doesn't go anywhere, but then this will be attached to the transport crates, which will eventually move the elephants. So in this short video, what you'll see is, again, the technique that's been worked out over many years of how you can actually move these full-grown elephants into a recovery crate without any kind of damage or injury to themselves. So you can see everyone is making sure that his legs, his trunk, his back, nothing is going to be injured as they pull him into the crate. And we make sure that someone is always monitoring his breathing and that he is safe. Once he gets into the crate, then we take the chains and remove the trailers and things like that, get everything into position. And once that is done, then what we do is the very last thing, a veterinarian will give him a reversal drug into one of the ear veins, and we flip their ear back, which has been covering their eyes. We use that as a blindfold for this procedure. And at that point, the elephants can wake up within just a few minutes. So this is the elephant. You'll see him waking up. As I mentioned, it only takes a few minutes. He has a nice wide crate. He's able to stand up. We're filming this from the top of the crate. No one's in the crate. And what we found over years of trial and error is, instead of putting the transport crate in front of the animal and trying to get them to move into the crate, if you put it behind them, when they wake up and there's a door in front of them, they will just naturally back into that other crate, and you can see that the doors are closed, and then we're ready to move the recovery crate and get on the road for transport. So obviously, once we are there at the site of release, then we can use the doors. As you can see, we make sure there's kind of a ramp or something so he doesn't trip when he gets out. And all along the journey, the elephant is being monitored continuously to make sure he's comfortable. We will give them tranquilizers, depending on how long the trip is. And you can see the little windows in the top of the crate, which allow us to monitor him and also administer any additional drugs that he might need. So you can see our elephant is now going off to his new home. And in many cases, you can move either a single elephant or even an entire family group using this technique. So one of the things that I wanted to do with this short presentation was really to give people an idea of all the things that go on behind the scenes when we talk about research on elephants, particularly wild elephants, and translocations for conservation activities. It is a very involved procedure, and it's done with only the best course people around. We always make sure that the safety of the elephants are the utmost importance. So as in terms of what is the importance of research in elephant conservation, as you can see from this presentation, a lot of work and a lot of animals over the years have allowed us to improve the safety of the techniques we use, how we monitor them, how we move them, and even different drug combinations that can minimize side effects that might occur when you're immobilizing elephants. It also allows us to take samples that can be distributed to a number of different researchers to develop tests for diagnosis that may impact diseases that threaten elephant populations, both human managed and wild populations. Importantly, a lot of the information we get is very basic information. We take measurements, we look at blood counts, look at parasite loads, etc. And that information gives us a great comparative database for our human managed elephants compared to wild populations, and gives us an idea as to what we now consider as normal or healthy for these different populations. And again, as I said, we take biobank samples, we keep detailed records so that this knowledge can be used to fill gaps in understanding elephant biology, and also go into the future for people that want to continue the work that is being done. We know that elephants are a keystone species and an architect of their environment. And so here in Kruger, that is something that is a much broader conservation activity, is understanding how elephants shape their environment for the survival of other species. So it's not just about survival of species, but it's really survival of ecosystems. So that's a very short presentation, but I want to again thank the IEF for all their years of support, and particularly with our current project, Understanding Immune Responses in African Elephants. And these are some of the key project members that are doing this work. And with that, Sarah, I'm going to turn it back to you for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am sure that this was a whole new world for people, and a very timely. I know in the news media we see translocations of wild elephants all the time, so this is really good for people to learn about. While we were waiting for people to put questions in the chat, why don't you tell us a little bit about what drew you to elephants in the first place, and maybe immunology specifically?
Thanks for that question, Sarah. So immunology, or studies of the immune system, are really a cornerstone for understanding health and disease. So if we don't understand the immune system, we really can't think about how are we monitoring disease progression in animals. How can we develop diagnostic tests that we can screen animals before they can actually develop disease, because oftentimes in wild animals, they hide their illnesses until disease has become quite advanced. So, so it's really important for us to, um, have that foundation and allow us to see not just diseases, but also the impact of stress, climate change, habitat loss, fragmentation of elephant populations, and whether that compromises their immune system and ability to survive into the future.
Absolutely. Um, so we have so many people who want to pick your brain. So we have a couple questions about anesthesia. Are there any impacts of the anesthesia on your research efforts? And then dovetailing with that, can you say a little bit more about the problems associated with an elephant being in sternal recumbency during anesthesia?
Great questions. So the drugs we use to immobilize wild elephants are very potent narcotics. Um, we use a drug called etorphine or thiofentanyl, and those drugs are roughly 10,000 times more potent than morphine. So very small amounts can fit into a dart, and we can immobilize a full-grown elephant. Because of the potency of those drugs, they can cause side effects. For instance, depressed respiration. That's why we always make sure that we're monitoring the animals closely. If there's ever any concern, what we can do is we can abort the procedure and quickly give them the reversal drug to counteract those side effects. In terms of their being in sternal, if you have them in sternal for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, you're not going to see a lot of problems. But if you leave them in that position longer, they are unable to move their chest adequately to inflate their lungs. So in elephants, their lungs actually are attached to the chest wall. And so it's a little bit different than most other terrestrial mammals. The other thing that happens is if they are in sternal, all of that content in their abdomen can press on their diaphragm and also restrict movement of air, so they can't get enough oxygen exchange. So that's why we and again, we've only learned this through years and years of people's experiencing putting animals in different positions and seeing what the impact is on them.
Absolutely. And the more you learn, the better all these procedures get, which is so important. Um, Dr. Paul Ling says, nice presentation. I was wondering how often you detect parasites in wild elephants and what kinds. Also, are you looking via direct observation of parasite signs or via immunological methods? Finally, how much do you think parasite infections alter elephant immunity, for good, for bad? What are your thoughts?
First of all, I want to say hi to Paul, and nice to have him on the call today. He does some tremendous work. In terms of the specific questions with parasites, we do find elephants carry low levels of ectoparasites, like like various ticks that are found in our environment. We also do find intestinal parasites, primarily nematodes. There's quite a few different groups that are actually looking at what parasites that our normal wild elephant populations carry, because one of the ideas is that when you're saving a species, you're not only saving the animal, you're saving all of the organisms that survive on that animal. So we don't typically see issues of illness associated with parasites, except in animals that are otherwise compromised, possibly due to drought, due to old age, or advanced disease. So I absolutely do think that parasites play a role with the host immune system. And so what we're studying with the immune responses in our wild elephants probably will be different than what we would see in our zoo animals that wouldn't have the same type of parasite load. Oh, the other thing was, yes, so in terms of identifying the parasites, there's a lot of work that's being done to look at DNA and the taxonomy and the biodiversity that's actually in the microbiome.
Great. Just more to learn. It just goes to show no matter what we do, there's even more for us to find out. But that's very interesting. Um, More questions. We have so many people about so many aspects of what you talked about. So, can you explain a little bit why the elephant moves backwards into the transport crate? Maybe behaviorally, why that has worked?
Sure. So what we believe is when the animal wakes up, you see he's right up against the closed door in front of him. Okay. So it's natural for an animal to want to move away from some type of obstruction. And because he can't move side to side, or there's not enough room to really turn around, he's going to back up, and he can't really see what's behind him, but he can feel, that there's space for him to move back. So for many years, people would recover the animals and then try to get them to move forward. And of course, they're looking at going into another closed box. So that didn't always work so well. So that was just kind of a trick of the trade that people learned through experience.
Yeah, well, and working with sort of natural instincts, right? When you wake up and you're startled, you're naturally going to step back, and that's what they do.
Hmm.
Um, okay, many more questions. So, are you seeing any cases of EHV in that wild elephants in Kruger?
Um, Great question once again. We have done a survey for EEHV. We have found some virus in the both in the respiratory secretions and also in the blood. We have never, knock on wood, seen a clinically ill elephant with EEHV. One of our hypotheses that we're trying to test now is that the EEHV is circulating in the population, and young elephants are being exposed and able to develop an immune response, so that as they get exposed throughout their lifetime, they're protected from actually developing clinical disease. So
Okay.
that's ongoing research.
Yeah, no, very exciting. Um, so what is the biggest pathological threat to wild populations in where you work?
Um, the biggest, I think, is it's it's basically comes down to humans. So the Kruger Park, as you saw, is a very long, thin park. All along our western boundary, right up to the fence of the park, are human communities, and these communities have livestock, have domestic animals. Uh, they also have a high burden of human TB and HIV. And in fact, of course, the fence is not impermeable. So people and animals can go both ways through the fence. And we had found one fatal case of human TB in a wild African elephant in Kruger, which really shocked us because that elephant would never have had any type of close contact. So we believe that even the environmental contamination of things like TB can be a threat to these populations that basically have nowhere to go. And so that's really the biggest concern, is as our populations grow, there's no place for them to really move. And people are demanding to come into Kruger to graze their livestock, to have land to farm, and those kind of things. So it's really us that are the biggest threat.
And unfortunately, that's across the entire landscape. Wherever there are elephants, it's human elephant conflict somehow relates to the problems. So I, it's frustrating, but that's good to know. Um, so many more questions. I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I'm assuming you're going to know. Is HPAI prevalent in Kruger? If so, are there any monitoring efforts or concern for elephants?
Great question. So HPAI is high path avian influenza, which is carried by wild birds and can get into poultry. And in the news recently, of course, in the United States, it's gotten into dairy cattle and also has affected some wildlife species, particularly wild large cats. So at this point in time, we have not um, seen any evidence that HPAI will get into elephants. We're not sure they can become infected, but these viruses can mutate and jump to new hosts, as we're seeing in just the past year. So there is some surveillance going on, but we have not seen any in Kruger. But that is of great interest, and there are people that are starting to look at that.
Great to know. Um, Going back to the translocation topic, what is the main reason for translocating an elephant? When you compare the cost and accessibility to elephants with trucks, can you recommend translocation be used to mitigate human-elephant conflict?
Ooh, that's a um, that's a difficult question. Elephants are often translocated, at least in southern Africa, to repopulate areas and rewild. So in areas that may have previously been farmed and now are being restored to create either game reserves or nature reserves, those type of things. So that's a big reason why the elephants are moved around in southern Africa. Um, yes, it is costly. Yes, it is involved. In terms of human elephant conflict, I don't think, and again, this is just my personal opinion, that moving one animal or a group of animals is really going to solve the bigger question. It may be a short-term solution, but the long-term solution is still there, where elephants and people are competing for the same resources.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, that's that's the problem that we're all trying to solve, right? That competition for resources. Um, a few years ago, do you remember that large elephant die-off? I think it was maybe 2 years ago in Botswana. Someone's asking if you have an opinion on that or have information on what caused it.
Actually, I do remember it, and the group in Zimbabwe, who I collaborate with, Vic Falls Wildlife Group, have been doing a lot of the testing of those elephants. So it's still ongoing, some of the work. So they're waiting to see, but it didn't seem to be a malicious cause, where in some other countries, sometimes animals are poisoned.
Yeah, very true. Um, Maybe tell us a little bit about what IEF funded. I know people are curious about the project that you're working with Stacy.
Absolutely. So again, we are incredibly grateful because, as you can imagine, research on elephants is as involved and costly as almost moving them. The project we're doing right now is really foundational to understand how elephants immune systems work. We have a little bit of information that they respond very differently than many of the other mammal species. So it's not a one size fit all. And we see that in response to TB and EEHV. So the idea is with these important diseases, we want to, detect animals early, prevent infections of animals, and we also want to think about developing vaccines for diseases that might threaten both managed and wild populations. And in order to do that, we really need an understanding of elephants' immune systems. So the work we're doing now is collecting cells, again, from the respiratory tract and from the blood. And we're actually comparing the function of those and trying to create some reference genetic a database to help other people that are working on similar issues in elephants and other wildlife.
That's awesome. And having that sort of foundational work will just help everyone in their research, which is so important. Um, so, slightly off of this topic, but I'm sure in the translocations and immobilizations that you've done, someone's asking if you routinely examine their teeth. Do you see any deformed molars or malocclusions in wild elephants?
So, yes, we do. Usually, if we have an immobilized elephant, we try to um, examine them as thoroughly as possible. It's very difficult to get their mouths open. So, usually, what we do is we'll actually palpate the teeth. That helps us with aging the animal. And also, then we can, make any comments about, as you said, are they losing teeth? Is there some type of abnormality, especially if the animal is thin or looks otherwise compromised? We do see some uh, molar abnormalities, but not very commonly. The biggest thing we see is in the older elephants that they're starting to lose that last set of molars, and then unfortunately they're not able to feed effectively, and that'll lead to eventual demise.
Right, right. Um, so, what do you find are the main challenges you face in studying elephants?
I think a few things. One is that elephants, their biology, their anatomy, their behavior, there's so many different things. Their physiology is so different than other mammals, and we really have to kind of start from scratch and have an open mind and understanding, and not trying to pigeonhole what we know about something else into these species. That goes for both Asian and African elephants. Um, a big challenge is access to elephants, especially wild populations, the cost involved, and also just again the funding of being able to, you know, acquire a helicopter and drugs and a team to do the sampling. So that's why it's really important for us that when we do a research project, we make sure that samples are collected for any other researchers that we know, and that we also take samples that go into a biobank, and that database is available for other people so that we can help, others that might not be as fortunate.
Fair enough, and that's so true. It's everyone can't think of just themselves. We got to all work together. Um, and along those same lines, you have had an incredible career and are having an incredible career with elephants and research. Do you have any suggestions for people who are just starting out, uh, as people begin their journey, perhaps in as a conservationist?
Yeah, I think the thing is that people that have passion for elephants always seem to find a path. And that path and journey is certainly not straight, and it's certainly not short. But getting involved with IEF, getting involved with your local zoo, supporting work that's done at universities around the world and at, both for wild populations and managed populations. So there's a lot of people that are working in this field, and they followed their passion. They were able to get in, and I think each one is going to be unique. But what I would say is find out something unique that you might be able to contribute, whether it's providing science communication, if you're really good in social media, or you're good at laboratory work, technical skills, maybe getting involved with people that do elephant research. And what's really important is then everybody contributes a little bit of a piece to the puzzle. And it also opens up opportunities to actually then experience working with the elephants themselves.
So true. And maybe that dovetails into this next question. You have such experience working with elephants both in range countries and in human care. Can you talk about how sort of your zoo experiences and stuff informed your work now?
Great question. I feel like my zoo experience working closely with elephants taught me a lot about, again, just understanding their behavior, how they respond to different things. I've always been incredibly impressed how zoos have been able to train their elephants to voluntarily participate in their own care and management, which is absolutely phenomenal. And that really opens your eyes up, because obviously in a wild situation, we don't train the animals, but we know what we can and cannot do. We also learn techniques over many years of working with zoo elephants, for instance, doing endoscopy or ultrasound or sampling techniques that you wouldn't want to necessarily just practice on a wild elephant the first time. So I think having been a zoo veterinarian really gave me the foundation to come here, and I've been very lucky working in Southern Africa. I know many of the wildlife veterinarians that call on me because of that zoo experience and knowing what is a normal blood count or what kind of diagnostic test to run for this or that. So I think it really takes that collaboration between kind of both specialties to benefit our elephants.
Absolutely. And like you said, the more you learn, the better. And it's that access to the animal that's really pushing everyone forward. So that's pretty wonderful. I think that we have answered everyone's questions. But you are getting so many accolades in the chat. I know that you have taught everyone so much. This kind of walking everyone through the procedures has been wonderful and so informative. Thank you so much. I know that IEF is incredibly proud of supporting your work. And you have lots of colleagues in the chat who have worked with you in the past and who are admirers. So thank you so much.
And I won't have time to name all the people I see in the chat, but to all my friends and elephant colleagues, thank you for everything you've taught me and all the support. And I'm really happy to hear that this was an interesting talk.